There are moments when you realize something about yourself that you can't undo. Not because you did something irreversible yet, but because you came close enough to see who you would become if you didn't stop. That's what this story is about. Not a love triangle, not temptation in the abstract, but the moment I understood how easily I could turn into someone I used to judge. For a long time, there was a woman I liked. Not casually, not as an idea. I liked her in a way that quietly reorganizes your attention. The kind of attraction that doesn't disappear when you ignore it, it just waits. I never played games with her. I didn't hint. I didn't orbit. I told her directly how I felt. She didn't reject me harshly. She was polite. She said I was kind, that I was a good person, that I deserved someone who would appreciate me properly. And then she told me she had feelings for someone else. At the time, that should have been the end of it. And in practice, it was. I stepped away. I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I accepted the answer and moved on. Later, I learned who that someone else was. He wasn't single. He was married. I remember sitting with that information longer than I expected. Not because I was jealous, but because something about it unsettled me. It changed how I saw her. It forced me to confront a question I didn't want to ask. What kind of person knowingly enters that situation? I told myself it wasn't my place to judge. I had already stepped away. Whatever choices she made after that weren't mine to carry. Time passed. Real time. Months, then years. Eventually, I heard what happened. She did sleep with him. His wife found out. The marriage ended. I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel smug. I felt uneasy. Because even though I had wanted her once, I was relieved I wasn't part of that story. I remember thinking, very clearly, that there were lines I wouldn't cross even if I wanted to. That desire didn't excuse damage. That wanting someone didn't give you the right to step into the wreckage of other people's lives. I believed that about myself. And for a while, that belief held. Not long after that chapter closed, I met someone else. My current girlfriend. She was different in a way that didn't announce itself loudly. She didn't pull attention. She didn't test boundaries. She didn't create uncertainty just to feel wanted. What attracted me to her wasn't intensity, it was stability. She showed up. She communicated clearly. She didn't make me guess where I stood. If I'm being honest, and I need to be honest here, she wasn't exactly my physical type. But I told myself that physical type wasn't the most important thing. That attraction could grow. That what really mattered was character, consistency, and emotional safety. And that wasn't a lie. It mattered to me. I chose her deliberately. Not out of desperation, not because I was settling, but because I believed this was what a healthy choice looked like. For a while, it felt right. Then, on my birthday, I received a message I didn't expect. From the woman I used to want. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flirtatious. It was just a greeting. Simple, casual, easy to respond to without thinking too much about it. And that was the first mistake. We started talking. At first, it really was harmless. Catching up. Surface-level conversation. No confessions. No nostalgia dumps. Just familiarity returning faster than logic could slow it down. Then she said something that lodged itself in my mind. She told me she had always liked me. That the timing back then hadn't been right. That things were different now. And suddenly, the situation wasn't hypothetical anymore. Because now, there was no obstacle on her side. On my side, though there was. I was the obstacle. That realization didn't come with excitement. It came with weight. Because I understood immediately what was happening. I felt the shift inside myself. The subtle recalibration where curiosity starts to override caution. I told myself I was just talking. That conversation didn't mean intention. That I wasn't doing anything wrong yet. But yet is a dangerous word. I started paying attention to how I justified small things. How responding quickly felt innocent. How continuing the conversation felt polite. How not mentioning my girlfriend felt convenient. I wasn't cheating, but I was preparing the ground. And the thought I hated the most arrived quietly, without ceremony. I realized I actually had a chance now. That thought should have scared me more than it did. Because the moment you start seeing a path, you start imagining outcomes. And once you imagine outcomes, you start unconsciously arranging your behavior to make one of them possible. That's when I caught myself thinking about how I would leave my girlfriend. Not whether I would. How? I started rehearsing explanations in my head, looking for reasons that would sound reasonable, reasons that would minimize conflict, reasons that would make me look less selfish. I told myself I didn't want to hurt her. But if I'm honest, what I really didn't want was to be seen as the kind of man who hurts people for desire. I wanted a clean exit. And the moment I recognized that, something uncomfortable clicked into place. I wasn't trying to protect her feelings. I was trying to preserve my self-image. That realization forced me to look at the situation differently. Because suddenly, I understood the man I had judged years ago. The married man who crossed the line. Not because he was evil, but because he convinced himself his circumstances were special. I understood how these stories don't begin with betrayal. They begin with permission. Permission you give yourself internally, long before anything physical happens. I understood how easily you can tell yourself that this time is different, that feelings justify damage, that honesty later will somehow make secrecy now acceptable. And that recognition scared me more than attraction ever could, because it meant that the boundary I once respected wasn't as solid as I believed. It was situational, conditional, vulnerable to the right combination of timing, attention, and ego. I realized that if I left my girlfriend for her, I wouldn't be making a bold romantic choice. I would be repeating a pattern I once claimed to stand against. Different details, same structure. Someone stable becomes disposable. Someone unavailable becomes irresistible. And the story gets rewritten to make the outcome feel inevitable instead of chosen. I could already hear how I would explain it to others, how I would soften it, how I would frame it as honesty, growth, or following my heart. And what terrified me was how convincing that narrative sounded, because it meant I was capable of lying to myself in ways I had once recognized in others. I started looking at my girlfriend differently, not because she had changed, but because I had. I realized she was trusting someone who was quietly weighing alternatives, someone who was physically present but mentally negotiating exits. That knowledge sat heavy in my chest, because regardless of what decision I made later, something was already wrong now. I wasn't fully there anymore. And that's when the real question surfaced, the one I couldn't dodge. Was I actually choosing love, or was I chasing validation? Was this about connection, or about proving to myself that I was still desired by the person who once overlooked me? Because attraction can feel like truth when it's really just ego resurfacing. And nostalgia can feel like destiny when it's really just unfinished business demanding attention. I asked myself how this would feel if the roles were reversed. If my girlfriend were the one receiving messages. If she were the one quietly reconsidering while telling herself it meant nothing. The answer wasn't abstract. It was visceral. I would feel betrayed. Not because of what she did, but because of what she was preparing herself to justify. And that realization stripped away the last layer of comfort. This was no longer about choosing between two women. It was about choosing which version of myself I was willing to live with. Once I saw the situation clearly, I expected clarity to bring relief. It didn't. It made everything heavier. Because awareness doesn't remove temptation. It sharpens it. When you know exactly what you're doing, every decision carries weight. Every reply feels intentional. Every silence feels like strategy. I stopped pretending this was just casual conversation. I knew what I was doing. I knew where this was heading if I didn't interrupt it. And that's when the pressure intensified. Not externally. Internally. I started feeling split. On one side, there was the version of myself that valued consistency, trust, and self-respect. On the other, there was a version that felt alive again, desired, seen by someone who had once overlooked me. That version didn't care about consequences. It cared about sensation. I noticed how easily I could slip into that mindset. How quickly rational thought gave way to emotional justification. I wasn't fantasizing about a relationship. I was fantasizing about being chosen. That distinction mattered, because it meant this wasn't about building something meaningful. It was about correcting an old wound. And wounds don't heal by reopening them. Still, I didn't stop immediately. That's the part that matters most. I told myself I needed time, that I needed to think, that clarity would arrive if I just sat with the discomfort long enough. But sitting with discomfort doesn't neutralize it. It amplifies it. I started noticing moments where I felt disappointed if I didn't hear from her. Moments where my attention drifted during conversations with my girlfriend. Moments where I compared without meaning to. And comparison is where relationships begin to die quietly. The most dangerous realization came when I caught myself feeling annoyed by my girlfriend's kindness. Not because it was excessive, but because it reminded me of what I was risking. She hadn't done anything wrong. She was present. She was consistent. She trusted me. And I was mentally halfway out the door. That's when fear entered the picture. Not fear of being caught. Fear of recognizing myself. Because I understood something then that I hadn't understood before. Betrayal doesn't start with action. It starts with permission. The permission to imagine a life where someone else becomes optional. I realized I was standing at the same edge I had once watched from a distance. Years earlier, I had judged someone for crossing a line that destroyed a marriage. I had told myself I was different, that I had stronger boundaries, that I wouldn't rationalize harm just because desire knocked loudly enough. And now I was staring at proof that I was wrong. The circumstances were different, the roles were different, but the mechanism was the same. I could already feel how easy it would be to step forward, how simple it would be to frame it as honesty, how quickly I could convince myself that following my feelings was brave instead of selfish. That scared me, because it meant that morality wasn't a fixed trait. It was a muscle, and mine was under strain. I started imagining what would happen if I crossed that line. Not the fantasy version, the aftermath. The moment where I would have to look my girlfriend in the eye and explain why stability wasn't enough. The moment where her confusion would turn into pain. The moment where I would have to live with the knowledge that I hurt someone who trusted me, not because she failed me, but because someone else reappeared at the wrong time. I imagined explaining it to friends, to family. I imagined the subtle judgment disguised as understanding, the polite nods, the quiet reclassification of who I was in their minds. But the image that stayed with me the longest was simpler. It was the version of myself I would wake up as afterward, the one who chose desire over integrity and then had to pretend the cost was unavoidable. That version of me felt hollow. And once I felt that hollowness, I couldn't ignore it. I realized that the question wasn't whether I could make this work. The question was whether I was willing to become someone who justifies damage because it feels good in the moment. That's when the situation stopped feeling romantic and started feeling dangerous. Dangerous not because of scandal, but because of erosion. The slow erosion of self-trust. I understood then why some people repeat patterns they swear they'll never repeat. Not because they're weak, but because they underestimate how convincing desire becomes when it disguises itself as truth. I didn't want to live inside that pattern, so I did something that didn't feel dramatic or noble. I created distance before damage. I didn't escalate. I didn't meet privately. I didn't let conversation drift further into territory where denial would become impossible. I pulled back while I still could, and I won't pretend that decision felt good. It felt like loss. It felt like unfinished business. It felt like walking away from something that could have been exciting. But it also felt like choosing not to become someone I would later struggle to respect. As for my current relationship, I didn't wrap it in a neat conclusion. Because real life doesn't resolve on cue. What I did was confront myself honestly. I stopped pretending I could keep one foot in each world. I acknowledged that even entertaining the alternative had already changed how I showed up. Whatever happens next will happen openly, not secretly, not through justifications whispered to myself late at night. Because I learned something about myself through this experience. I learned that the most dangerous moments aren't the ones where you feel out of control. They're the ones where you feel powerful enough to choose and realize that the wrong choice would still feel justified. I used to believe the hardest part of love was rejection. Now I know it's temptation. And sometimes, the most important boundary isn't the one you keep with other people. It's the one you keep with yourself. What scares me isn't what I felt. It's how easily I could have justified it.